All right. Welcome back, everyone. All right. I forgot to do the exit poll in our class last week. I apologize. Let me just go through some of the questions from the other section, which are usually pretty similar to yours. I think that will help bring us back to order. There were a couple of questions I did want to address the other class had. All right, so a lot of you actually liked this Splunky reading. Some of you didn't. Some of you liked it, so I appreciate some of you liked it or not. Yeah, so this is a question I got from a couple people, right? Property law is not very clear-cut. I think I told you that on the first day of class. Even the rule of capture is not clear-cut. I think even the readings today on oil and gas make that even more abundantly clear. How are we supposed to resolve questions? And the unfortunate answer is we need to keep in mind many different tests. And when you're reading a question, you're going to have to think to yourself, the facts in this question are most similar to which case we've studied, right? That's why I write a question for an exam or otherwise. I take a question you've read in class and I sort of twist the facts around. And you have to figure out which case we read is closest to the facts I'm giving you. And then you have to recognize, how did Josh twist the facts that may make the case kind of differently, right? That's what you have to start keeping in mind. So a bunch of you asked that, and I want to address that. Yeah, again. So a couple of people asked, is a Splunky thing on the exam? And it's, the short answer is, I will not ask about cannibalism on the exam. No, that's not going to be in the exam. But a lot of my questions are based on how would a judge decide a case. And not just in this class, in all of your classes, I should hope this Splunky case sort of informs the way you go about thinking of questions. So directly, no, but indirectly, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so a common question I get, and this is very common from first-year law students, is I don't know what to take away from class. Right? That's a very common question. So I do a couple things to address it, right? I begin class by giving you an overview. I end class by saying, here's what I think was important. And still, people aren't sure what to take away. And this is not meant as a criticism, but it's sort of like a growing experience of law school. As you go from 1L to 2L to 3L, is to start figuring that question on your own. You'll find your second-year professors are less, how should I say, hand-holding, right, about what you should take away. In other words, we're here for 90 minutes. You've had readings. You have notes. It's for you to figure out what to take away. It's not always going to be the case where there's some sort of like a Cliff Note version of what to digest. I'll try and give it to you. And if it's still not clicking, come talk to me. One of the challenges of law school is to figure out on your own what it is you should be taking away from class. Understand? It's not a pleasant message. I just hate when I say it, but it's true. If you're not clicking, in other words, if you're here for 90 minutes and you're not sure what you're supposed to be taking away, come see me right away. Right? Come to my office. 623. Come on by right after class, and I'll help you. But it's something that you should start clicking on your own. If it's not, second year become a lot tougher. That's just it's a sad truth. Okay. I had a lot of absence in the class. I wasn't sure why. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't do the exit poll for your class. I forgot, but I'll do it for today. So get your feedback. All right. Questions, things on your minds. No? All right, let's do a little review. Again, these questions designed, if you're not sure what to take away, these questions are reviewing what you should need to know. This should be actually fairly simple. First question, question 1. Which rule? Oh, shoot. The thing just crashed. I'm sorry. iClicker crashed. I'll read it. Oh, no. Which rule from Pearson v. Post provides more certainty? A, the majority opinion by Judge Tompkins. B, the dissenting opinion from Judge Livingston. Okay, let me see. I had to reboot the app. I apologize. Okay. There it is. Okay. All right, so which provides more certainty? If you find yourself asking, oh man, which opinion was which? That's the reason I'm asking this question. You need to remember not only majorities, but dissenting opinions throughout the semester. Okay. All right, who's up next? Okay. All right, Ryan, it's you. Ryan, what's your answer here?
I said Judge Tompkins majority opinion.
Why?
Because he goes by the rule of capture.
Good.
And so it's very evident in Pearson v. Post, the rule of capture, because Pearson actually has the fox.
Good.
The dead fox. He shot it. Whereas with Post, we don't know how long he's facing that fox.
Excellent. Right. Okay, good. 90% of you got this right. 10% did not. Again, I don't mean this to be critical. I'm not even going to look up who got it wrong, but I asked the exact same question last week. The exact question. So if this isn't clicking, come talk to me right away. These questions are here. It's not remembering. If you don't remember, something's not working, right? And I can help you with it. And I'm happy to help you with it. That's exactly right. The answer is A. All right. Let's do number 2. Which opinion from Pearson is more fair? And this will be for Margot. Two Margos. The answer will be why. The follow-up will be why, but just put your answers in, please. Okay, Margot, what do you got here? Okay, tell me why. Okay, that's right. Well, I think that's a better answer. I'll come to the other one in a minute. This one actually is not so clear, but I think that's the better answer. What theory, Margot, does Judge Livingston's dissent favor?
Like instead of like rule of capture, like for property land, like if you put work into it,
Good.
you can have actually what you
Right. You put more work into it, you invest labor, you find the fox, you don't quite get to it. John Locke would say, we'll still give you a reward of it, and that's actually the favor of the approach of Judge Livingston in dissent. Very good. Again, 90% or 90% got this one. Anyone want to defend A? A is not unreasonable. And again, I'm not saying anyone's wrong. Yeah, Will, and then Will and Rashad, go once. I'm sorry, a little bit louder.
You reward him being like a loser.
You reward the loser. Oh my God! Imagine if I apply that to grading. My goodness. You reward the loser.
Like, it doesn't make sense to punish the guy who actually killed the fox because the other guy was hunting him for 5 hours and then actually captured the fox.
Okay, Shadi, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think there's more utility socially broadly, rewarding the person that actually got it.
So you're taking a different conception of fairness than Margot did, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, fairness to the individual, I guess you could argue, but you couldn't necessarily prove
Good.
definitively.
Yeah. So look, I think number one's pretty clear cut. This one, I can see both sides. I think the better answer, in my view, at least what professors used to say, is usually. But if you can defend it, you can defend it. Why am I giving this multiple choice? How are the 2 right answers? My exams are all essay. All essay. If you can defend your position, that's good. I don't really care what you put. I don't usually have a single right answer in mind when I write a question. Most questions can easily go either way. Students hate that, but I think it's actually more fair, no pun intended, right? It actually gives you more opportunity to show me what you know. I don't care what you believe. It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I don't care what you believe, but I don't care which way you come at. It makes no difference to me. Oh, someone asked for the exam, open book. Can you bring your digital textbook and your iPad? The answer is no, and I'll just explain why. I had this data a couple of years ago, even before the pandemic. Once you allow digital resources on the exam, like your iPad, there is no way to prevent cheating. Texting each other, group chat, you can't prevent it. So the answer is paper, unfortunately. I'm sorry. So bring the big, thick red book. I'm sorry, that's the answer. Yeah, I went through this a couple of years ago, and just there was just so much dissension. I was like, I can't do it. Again, cheating in my exam is really hard. It's been very hard to do. But the funny thing about cheating, it's not even actual cheating that bothers people. It's the appearance people might cheat, in the sense that, oh, he's getting an unfair advantage. So let me get an unfair advantage for myself, and it's sort of like race to the bottom. We all start trying to outdo each other, and just creates this like sense of distrust among your classmates, which I don't like. So I have to pick rules that aren't, pun intended, fair, but that sort of create an equal playing field for everyone. That's the answer. I'm sorry. But someone did ask, and I wanted to get back to them. So kill trees. I'm sorry. Anyway, there we are. You know, they actually during the pandemic, the bar exam, this was crazy. They actually rented out the Hilton Americas, the hotel right over there, the Hiltons. They rented an entire floor, and they gave each bar taker their own hotel room. And they had to keep the door wide open so they were spaced out, taking the bar exam. They had to seal their room, put all their belongings in a suitcase, and put tape on their suitcase. They couldn't even open it. They couldn't even go to the bathroom unless they got permission from a proctor. They made this stuff up on the fly. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they made this up so people would have their own room, and they could sit for the bar during we're still in the pandemic, but the earlier stages. Now it's like whatever, basically. All right. Any questions? All right. This one's harder. Number 3. It's gonna be a short answer. State the rule of capture. So it's like, what's the rule? This ain't negligence, my friends. What's the rule of capture? See what you can do. This will be for Helene in a minute. Okay, give you a little bit more time for this card. Yeah, trying to put in one sentence is not easy, is it? And I'll give you a hint. Don't use the word capture in your answer. I should have said that earlier. Sorry. All right. Another 5 seconds. Wrap it up. See what you can do. All righty. Helene, help us out here. What did you put?
I just said that ownership is rewarded to the first person who takes possession.
First person who takes possession. Good. How would one take possession?
By having it physically in your hand.
What about just a whale?
Or you're, you would have to have something like a voice like that internet.
What about people? I'm sorry, again, be rich. Do we have evidence that their harpoon injured the whale? So is that a real capture case? Or is that, what kind of case is that? Well, one of the 2 different theories. It's not real capture. What would it have been?
Oh, discovery.
No. Why is not discovery? Glad you said that. That's wrong. What's discovery for?
Oh, for
Discoveries for land, territory. Right, we're talking about animals. What are the 2 doctrines we have for animal country? We've had capture, which you said, and what's kind of the other one? I think Barbara mentioned a minute ago.
conquest.
No, conquest is also for territory. I'm glad you said that, but that's wrong. What are we talking about? Margaret? Labor. I use that a picture time. I told you, should we mass cover that? Labor, right? So taking something, physical possession, right? Those are all good definitions. But then you sort of have these but what about hunting a whale? What if you have a harpoon, right? What if you're capturing a baseball? It hits you, you don't have control. Right? Shadi, what's your definition? Let's see how you wrote it out.
Person trying to take physical possession, and or by labor depriving it natural liberty.
So you start combining labor theory with real capture. Are you comfortable with that? You think that's a better definition?
I think in some cases, I just remember you saying like, there's no clear rule, it can be either one depending on the situation.
Yeah. Right. So Shadi, I think, did something different. He said, right, physical control, that's sort of like what Helene said a minute ago, but also depriving of natural liberty, labor theory. That's not wrong, right? In many regards, capture theory sort of incorporates labor doctrine. They're not like, totally separate. They're overlapping. All right, did you everybody? Did you do that side? Margot, this Margot. Margot, what's your definition? We'll do one more.
For the rule of capture,
Sure, yeah.
when someone takes an animal into his actual possession.
Actual possession. What's actual possession?
Like having unequivocal.
Ooh, good. That's I was looking for that word. Like, what's it? Say it again.
Unequivocal dominion.
Yeah, unequivocal dominion. That was the case. That was the word used in case. I think that's the good word, right? Absolute control, unequivocal dominion. That's good. I'll tweak just a little bit more. It's not just animals, right? What does rule capture apply to? What's this sort of umbrella category?
Also, fugitive resources.
Good. Fugitive resources, the exact word I was looking for. Very good. So in your notes, keep in mind it's not. It applies to what we call fugitive resources. So oil and gas, water, things we're talking about today, all goes into the rule capture. Even a baseball, right? A baseball is treated as if it was a fugitive resource. So let me try to synthesize Margot, Helene, Shadi, just if I can. It's hard, but let me see what I can do. It's not going to be one sentence. The rule of capture applies to fugitive resources, right? It rewards the person who gets actual possession, unequivocal dominion over the resource. And that can be done through physical holding it, in your hands. It can also be done through tools and other devices, right? Okay, James?
Does corporal possession encompass both of those?
Well, corporal usually means you touch, you have it in your hands. But capture theory doesn't always mean what's in your hands. So, for example, whale, but also oil, right? You can't put oil in your hands, it'll just slip. It's a liquid, right? You can't put gas in your hands, it'll float into the air. So that's why I'm saying devices, different tools. So if you have like an oil tank and you put the oil into your tank, that's good enough. If you have a tank for gas, you put it in your gas tank, okay, that's yours. If you have a reservoir for water, okay, that's yours, right? It's not, corporal possession is good for like animals that you can actually hold in your hand, but gas or water, you can't hold water in your hand, it'll just float away. That help your answer?
Yes.
Right, yeah, the oil and gas topic actually messes rule of capture quite a bit. We'll go through this, I think, in today's lecture. All right, does anyone else want to add to the definition, things in your mind? Yeah, Shadi, go back to you.
Work a constructive possession as one possibility, or just treat that as something separate?
So I think constructive possession is sort of like rule of labor theory, right? It's like you didn't quite get there, but you got close enough, right? You didn't quite get to the top, but you close enough. So I think that's more of a labor theory. Look, you're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. But when I try to teach this topic, I try to keep labor and capture separate because I think it confuses students when you try to merge them. But you're not wrong. I think definitely you'll see judges who sort of merge them in different ways. But I try to, in my notes, at least separate them. But you're not wrong. What else? Anyone else? You want to add some definition? Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
So subject to the rule of capture that wild animals, fugitive resources, things like baseballs. On that note, since things like baseballs are subject to the rule of capture, are any unowned chattels like?
Well, it's not just unowned, it's fugitive. And what fugitive means is it moves around, right? The key point about a wild animal is it's not domesticated, right? A whale won't stay in one part of the ocean, it'll go wherever it wants. A fox won't stay in one part of the beach, will run wherever it wants, right? We'll get to oil in a bit, but in theory, at least, oil doesn't stand to your ground. Wherever it finds a crevice, it sort of, snakes throughout the gas, right? A river doesn't stay in one place. It flows wherever it flows, wherever the earth goes. So fugitive means it can't be controlled naturally, right? You have to put artificial constraints to block it. The baseball, maybe not a good example, but once he hit the ball, it was flying and someone had to stop it, which of course is nonsense because eventually it's going to run out of speed and just fall to the ground. But this is what the judge decided. Yeah, I'm not sure baseball is a future resource. It's kind of silly to think about it because, eventually that ball is going to run out of speed and hit the floor, and then it's an object on the ground, right? You ever see these videos where, someone into baseball goes out to the windshield and he has a new baseball in his car, right? Other questions? No? All right, very good. All right, let's move on. I think I don't know. Maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but I think you're more or less up to date now. All right. So let's talk about oil and gas. Sarah, let me ask this question, right? Why do judges decide to treat oil and gas as a future resource? Right? Why do they compare oil and gas to hunting animals? Why did this analogy come about?
It's like wild animals, it's not tied to one place.
Okay, so they move around. Okay. Why, Sarah, follow-up question, please. Why is the analogy kind of silly?
Well, I guess if it moves around, it could just move from property to property and it'll tell who it belongs to.
Okay, so Sarah, can you hunt the fox?
Oh, yeah, you can.
Can you hunt oil?
No.
Is oil a living being who has instincts as, let me zig left or zig right? How does oil and water and gas move? Wherever there happens to be a hole it goes to? Right, okay. So I think what you'll find in law school in general is that judges are not very creative. And I think that's actually a good thing. Creative judges are doing a bad job. Judges should not be creative for a lot of reasons, right? But the downside of that is judges tend to say, I have this case in front of me. I have this old precedent. Let me see how I can apply this old precedent to this new thing, right? That's what you all do as law students, right? You have some old precedent. You have some new conflict. How do I apply this old test to this new thing? So judges said, wait a minute, we have this new thing called oil, right? We discovered in Spindletop, right, in Texas, these geysers of oil shooting up 50 feet in the air, right? And you have all these people fighting over who owns the oil. So you know what? Fox case, right? Whale case, right? We got the duck case, right? They said, we got all these cases, right? And oil is like a fugitive resource. It's running through the ground. No one can stop it. So let me treat oil as if it were a fox or a duck, which is, kind of insane for other reasons. So I'll just give you a couple. One, you can't hold a fox. I'm sorry, you can hold a fox in your hand. You can't hold oil, right? If you put your hand in a bottle of oil, you get really dirty. It doesn't say that, right? You can't hold it. Right? Corporal possession, whoever said corporal before, you can't corporal possess oil. It just doesn't work. You can't possess gas. It'll just into the air. It's also silly because a fox is a finite resource. There's one fox. Maybe there's a family of foxes, 4 or 5 foxes. But you have millions of barrels of oil that keep flowing and flowing and flowing, right? So it doesn't really make sense. Is that Christina? Christina, let's look at another problem with treating oil like foxes, right? Generally, how are people hunting foxes? What was the custom at the time? You shoot them. How many foxes would you hunt at a time?
I have no idea.
Well, in our case, how many foxes were they going after at a time?
One.
And after they got their fox, did they think they were done for the day? Okay. With oil, Were people trying to capture 1 barrel of oil at a time? How much oil are they trying to capture?
Whatever's in the well, I suppose,
As much. Why are they trying to get as much as they can?
because it's more money.
And what happens if they don't pump it?
Someone else will.
Exactly. Right. With hunting, I think there's always the risk of overhunting, right? That if too many people hunt in a given area, they will dwindle the population, and there won't be enough deer or whatever it is. And that's why you have hunting seasons. You only hunt certain seasons. You limit how many you can kill. But with oil, it's not just about hunting 1 or 2 foxes or 1 or 2 deer. You're trying to get as much as possible. Why? Christina tells us, because if you don't pump it, somebody else will, right? There's a finite amount of oil on the ground, and you're in a race to the bottom of the well, right? Whoever gets to the bottom of the well first and drills the most wins, because they got the most out of it. And once the well's empty, who cares? Right? Go dig somewhere else. You ever heard the phrase "race to the bottom"? That's actually where it comes from, right? You're racing to the bottom of the well. You're trying to get to the bottom. Whoever hits dirt first, I win, right? Because if you don't pump fast enough, he will. She will. They'll get your oil. Right? So you can imagine conflicts arose very quickly over this sort of race to the bottom of the well. Did anyone ever see the movie There Will Be Blood? Really good movie. Let me play you a brief clip. It's an excellent movie. It goes by quickly, so I have a minute. So this is the Daniel Day-Lewis character was playing an oil tycoon, and he's talking about drilling someone else's well. Oh, let me show you this first, right? I'll get back to the video in a minute. I'm sorry, it went too quickly. Right. So here's just a picture of what drilling can look like, right? You have these drills on this, and you basically put pipes into the ground. And the idea is, if you put the pipe deep enough, you find oil in the ground. You apply pressure to this pump, and the pressure sucks up the oil to the surface, and you can put it in barrels. But if you notice, this is not going straight down. It's going on a slant. The Simpsons parody this, I think, quite well. Slant drilling is a problem, right? Go say you have 2 plots of land right next to each other. There's oil under A, but not under B. B drills at a 45-degree angle to get to his neighbor's oil. Can you do that, Austin? Can you drill the 45-degree angle into your neighbor's lot?
No, you cannot.
Okay, tell me why you can't do that.
Besides trespassing, it starts violating the space between pool and laws.
Absolutely. So do the trespass first. Yeah.
Because you're going, whenever you start sand drilling and you're going under somebody's property, you're interfering with their mineral rights and their right to drill what's under their property as well.
Exactly right. Thank you, Austin. Right. So trespass is trespass, right? We have land. We also have surface rights. We have air rights, and we have subsurface rights. If I walk onto your property with a shovel and you start digging, that's a trespass of your surface rights. Everyone knows that's trespass 101. But if you dig underground across someone's property, that's also a trespass. You cannot do that, right? You're trespassing their land. But drilling got smarter, right? It wasn't necessary to actually drill onto their property. So let's just say you have this pipe going like this, right? Let's say the boundary is over here, or right where this picture ends. If you put enough pressure on this region of the soil, it actually sucks the oil from the neighboring lot. Oh, right? So you don't have to actually physically trespass. But if you put pressure onto the earth here, it creates pores in the soil, and the oil sort of comes through. So it's almost like a straw, right? Imagine you put a straw very close to a cup of water, not in the water, but very close to it, and you suck it, the water actually sort of goes up. Same idea, I'm sort of exaggerating, but put a lot, I mean, we're talking a really big straw, right? If you put a really big straw near the border, it actually sucks in the oil. So is that a trespass? Well, under common law doctrine, the answer is no, because you're not actually on their property. You're just applying pressure to your soil, and that sort of moves stuff around and creates a cavity, a gap for the oil to come over. So this idea of sucking a milkshake is actually the basis of this scene. This movie is, if you ever watch a good text movie, this is a good movie. They're playing oil barons, I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I can't remember the year. And Daniel Day-Lewis has this great line. I won't ruin it for you, but he's talking about sucking oil. It gets loud very quickly. Drainage.
Drainage, Eli, boy. Drain dry. I'm so sorry. If you have a milkshake, and I have a milkshake, and I have a straw, there it is. That's the straw. Watching. My straw reaches across the room and starts to drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. Don't bully me, Daniel.
You know, it's a really good movie. Everyone will watch it. I'll call it There Will Be Blood. But that's the idea, right? So in response to this, courts quickly realized that the standard, it's a fox, right? The standard rule of capture was not going to be ideal. And Texas and other states created these very spacing requirements where you can't drill within X feet of your neighbor, right? So that sort of prevents it. But I'm not asking about the statutory stuff that's for your oil and gas class. What I'm concerned is actually rule of capture. And to this day, Texas and many other states apply a rule of capture. So it's not just about foxes, my friends. It's about oil, which could be millions and millions of dollars. Very valuable resources, okay? Any questions so far? All right, so far we've talked about rule of capture, right? And saying that you can't slant drill and you can't use pressure to suck. What happens if you have two plots of land, A and B, and there's a big pool of oil under both of them, right? So there's no trespassing involved. There's a and B, and there's a shared pool of oil under both plots of land. This is actually on page 44. There's some questions there. This is actually, I think, question A. Avani, you here? Sorry, it's a Zoom force of habit. Are you here? And I know you're here. You're sitting in front of me. There's a live human being. I'm not looking at a stupid square. Someone in their pajamas. This still amazes me. People were late to class on Zoom. I will never understand for life of me. I can't fathom it. You're really in bed. Avani, let me ask this question. What happens again if you have A and B right next to each other, neighbors, and underneath there's a shared pool of oil? In other words, it doesn't begin, it doesn't end. There's a huge pool of oil under A and B, and they both start drilling. What happens? So can they both drill as much as they want and empty out that pool and without any regard to their neighbor? So there are two different precedents discussed on page 44, two different approaches. There are two cases it's in paragraph A. What are those approaches? Paragraph A. Everyone has on page 44 on the right page? References two different cases. What are those two different approaches? What are the two ways you can approach this issue? Or what might be the other approach? Okay, that's what I'm looking for. What does excessive drilling mean? What's excessive drilling? Oh, there's that word again, fair. What theory is that fairness? Labor theory. So is this pure rule capture now? What's it sort of incorporating?
Oh, the amount of work you put into it.
Not just kind of work, what's a more fair doctrine, right? So again, thank you, Bonnie, very good. It's never stripped to straight capture, right? Because if it's rule of capture, that means you just drill to the bottom of the well. Get there, drill as much as you want, you're done. But the courts and also the legislature says sometimes, well, we need to have some other doctrine involved, so focus on fairness, right? We can't let people exploit resources. And often courts issue injunctions about over drilling. There's not a clean rule here. And even to this day, oil and gas firms fight over this in court over how much they can drill in a given location. I mean, now it's mostly statutory. It's about permitting, right? There's different things that the legislature can do. But there's a lot of cases saying, well, hunting lots of, drilling lots of oil is like hunting lots of foxes, right? Which is insane, but okay, that's how these things work. Okay? That's all I want to say about oil and gas. You'll have a class later in law school. You'll talk about this for an entire semester. That's all I want to do here. Any questions? Gas is treated the same way. It's just sort of future resource searches, puffs through the ground, etc. Yes, awesome.
I guess just the relevancy. Do we need to know anything about the spacing and cooling laws that they discuss?
Those are the statutory stuff. I don't really ever test on that. If you want to know it, it's good to know, but I've never wanted to ask about that. Good to know. If you want to get into this field. Any landmen, people who've done oil and gas stuff? You should have one or two. No? Yeah, you should have one or two students who've done, oil prospecting out west, in West Texas. Okay, let's go on then. Let's talk about water. Water. Most people never think about water. They just don't care. They just turn on the faucet and water comes out. It's like, all right, whatever. But there's a lot of work that goes into water coming out of your tap, right? That you have to drink. And the rules for water actually vary in different parts of the country. In the eastern parts of the country, there's a lot more water. And the western parts of the country are very dry. So we have different rules. There are 3 different rules that I need you to know about how to apply capture theory to the underground water sources. So is that Brianne? Brianne, what's the English rule?
The English rule is whoever has the water owns the water.
Okay, so let's just imagine there's a river, right? And a river runs through, 100 miles and runs through 100 different pieces of property. Can everyone along that river take whatever they want? In the English rule.
Yes.
And what happens if the person all the way to the top of the river puts a dam and builds a reservoir and blocks it? Is that okay?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. Right. So the English rule is you get there first, it's yours. But you might have problems with people building dams and preventing others from acquiring. All right. Who's that? Rodney? Rodney, so how do the Americans do a little bit differently than the Brits?
Well, you've got yourself a Western philosophy and an Eastern philosophy.
Let's do the Eastern one. And usually this is, I think, a bias of people on the East Coast. The American rule is the East Coast rule. That's usually what it's called. Again, I've been in Texas now for more than a decade. I'm fine with that. But what's the American rule that was used out east?
Basically, if you own property along a body of water, you get the water.
But there's a caveat.
You're subject to other, they call it riparian rights.
Okay, and what does that mean? What can you not do that you could do in England? What does the American rule not permit?
You can build a dam. Or,
Be more general. What can you not do under the American rule? What can you not do? Okay. What's not? Yeah. Or how must you use the water? One factor. But again, the river flows through 100 properties. How much do you use the water? What fraction? In English rule, you can use it wastefully, do whatever you want. With the American rule.
You can't use it wastefully.
Wastefully. Yeah, that's it. Okay, good.
Harm your neighbor.
There's a reasonableness standard. You have to use the water reasonably. You can't fraction. What exactly that means will be the source of a lot of litigation because it's not always obvious. But to use the example I gave to Rodney or maybe Brianna a minute ago, you can't build a dam, right? You can't be a jerk and build a dam so that the river dries out, right? Courts can actually assess, okay, how much water do you actually need? Okay, you can take that much, but you can't start bottling it and selling it. I don't know if people do that back then, but you can't start diverting the water for other purposes. This creates a lot of litigation. So people might build dams, they might build the water wheels, right, for factory, right? They might do different things to try to divert the water for other purposes. They might do irrigation for watering their crops. They could try to dry out a river. Right? Imagine it's a lake, and the lake is basically exploited too much. There's not enough water in there. So there's a lot of different ways to exploit it. So the Eastern rule, the American rule, applies kind of a reasonableness standard, which allows the courts to sort of divvy it up. All right. I can't see your name. I'm sorry. Rhett. How does the Western rule differ a little bit?
The Western rule, I think they called it prior appropriation.
Okay.
But basically, first come, first served, as long as you're using the water reasonably.
Okay, but it's a little bit of a tweak, right? Will the court just say, well, if you use it reasonably, that's enough? A and B want to both use the water. Who wins that case?
It would depend, but I would say probably in the given territory, it would depend on the beneficial use.
Ah, that's an magic word, beneficial. What does it mean, beneficial use?
So for the intended purpose of actually using the water, is it reasonable?
Well, not just reasonable. Let's say one party is using the water to irrigate crops, and the other side is using the water, I don't know, to run like a water park or something, right? I'm just making an example. Which would be the more beneficial use to society?
The one that's going to feed people. Beneficial use.
Right. So courts can actually step in and say, what's better for society? Running a water park or irrigating crops? 1 second, Chuck. So it's actually giving the law the power to sort of assess what's better for society. It's kind of a weird standard. And this is not insane. Sometimes when you have droughts, right, the government often says, okay, you can't water your lawn, right? You remember these things, like these drought warnings. We need water for more important things. Your grass can turn brown for a few weeks. What's more beneficial use, right? Don't wash your car, right? You have a dirty car for a few weeks. So the government often will say, we're short on water, this has not rained, don't wash your car, right? Don't fill your pool up. For people who need to drink and water crops and stuff. Okay, Shadi, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what if you build a dam and, would that be considered beneficial?
So many different ways to find beneficial. It's not clean, right? But the point is, it's another factor for the court to consider that. You not only consider, is it used in a wasteful fashion? You can say, if it's a conflict between A and B, who has a higher use, who has more beneficial use? Because let's say two people are on the same river, and they're both claiming access to water, how do you pick one or the other? And the beneficial use is part of the analysis. Again, it's all right. In the English rule, take as much as you want, doesn't matter. In the Eastern rule, the American rule is called, you focus on, you can't use it in a wasteful fashion. But the Western rule adds an additional wrinkle to it. What's the more beneficial use of the water to society? Everyone get those 3 tests? The 3 different approaches? Yeah, I know 3 of them. Often on an exam, I'll say, you're in New York or you're in California or something, and that will be your cue of where you are, which test you got to apply. It will be obvious from the question. I won't try and trick you, right? But you'll know what rules are going to be applied. All right. Questions on water. You can take an entire class on water law. I've actually never taken it, but it exists. You can take these courses. Yes, Austin and Ben, please.
So I guess in kind of going back to like with the farmland example, what if you have 2 farmers that are both growing crops over the same aquifer? And they're both using it beneficially. Is it just whoever starts extracting first?
It's actually, it's not a fancy question. It's a real question. So in California, I think I'm right. It's soy requires a lot of water, right? If anyone knows about farming, tell me if I'm wrong. But I think soy, whatever reason, requires. Yes, am I right about this?
Yeah.
So soy requires extreme amounts of water, so much so that other crops are actually, other farms are getting suffered. So now the courts decide, what do we let? Do we let the soy farmers get their thing or other farmers? And then it gets to politics and they start lobby. But for whatever reason, soy requires a lot of water. I couldn't tell you. Well, why does soy require so much water? I have no idea why.
I don't.
Okay, you mean neither. Okay, me too.
Just now it does.
Me too. So it happens in California has severe water shortages. We also have agriculture. And the various interest groups fight against each other who gets access to water supports. Yes. Oh, no, Ben and then Tiffany.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I was confused. In the reading we did, said that the Western, reasonableness and beneficial use limits on the water.
Yeah.
But it says that riparian rights, they were only subject to the rights of other riparians. So I guess I'm kind of confused where.
If 2 farmers both claim to the same river, of course consider beneficial use to sort of divvy up the wins. That? Yep.
So when you said, sometimes like in California, they have like state mandates not to wash their cars and stuff like that.
I don't know, I'm guessing. I know we have them in Houston every now and then. I've heard of those.
Would that, I don't know, open some mandate for litigation for like tort liability?
Oh, someone washes their car and they're not supposed to?
Yes, or doesn't.
I think the city should choose a fine. I don't know if it's a court issue, but I think the city should just take it to companies to do washing the car. I'm not sure.
What if there's a drought and they don't wash their cars and they have an accident and?
Oh, because the windshield's dirty?
Yeah.
Too funny. Yeah, it's a awesome question. It is. No. It's like the kind of question of writing an exam. That's one thing. It's fun. I mean, you take a wipe. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure if there's if you have a dirty windshield, I'm not sure that you'd be sanctioned for it. That's good. Good question. Yeah, it's a contributory negligence. They can't let you wash your windshield, and you have a blind spot, and then you see this. Intervening call. I can't remember the court. So that'd be a fun court question. I don't know. Other questions? Actually, you're next. So, all right. So, taking questions. What's acquisition by creation?
It's when you possess the right to something that you brought to fruition.
Oh, okay. Look, that's really good. What do you mean brought to fruition? Let's just spell that out for a minute.
So you can either have a thought and then, manifest. Like there's an idea and then you kind of use resources and materials.
Okay, good. Now you're nurturing. What do you mean you manifest using resources? What do you mean?
So you have an idea and then you do some research and then
Good.
you find the appropriate materials.
Okay, so now we're getting closer. So Nick, can you just have an idea in your head and it just appears in front of you? Does that work in our world?
No, there's a process to that.
Okay. So is it possible to create something entirely with your own hand? I'm just using your own hands and nothing else.
Yes.
So and it appears? And where do those materials come from?
I guess either
nature or people that are mining those materials.
Ah. All right. So this idea of acquisition by creation, right? Just remember things that thin air, right? What you're doing in nature, or maybe your object someone else created, and you're doing stuff to it to change the form. So let's say, I don't know, I have no talent, but let's say I'm a woodworker, right? I have nothing. I can't build anything. No, not even IKEA, nothing. Let's say you see a tree, think, that's a beautiful tree. Let me chop it down and make a wood something out of the tree, right? Well, actually, even think about it. Did you make the axe? Probably not. Maybe you can just push the tree over. If you want to chop the tree up, you have to make a knife out of a stone, okay? Then a handle, right? Everything you do is premised on taking stuff you found elsewhere in the form, right? It's almost impossible. I mean, I guess you can take a piece of clay from the earth and shape it. That's what the easiest example I can think of, like all of yourself, but you're still taking something from the commons. All right. But Tiffany mentioned a minute ago, you have a thought, right? You have an idea. Creation is an act of productivity, right? You have an idea of how to build something, and then you figure out how to take resources in the world and apply your labor, right? Apply your labor to it, and you make something, right? This idea of acquisition by creation is very much based on John Locke. That if you take some resources from the commons, you apply your labor to it, that becomes yours, right? You build a wood something, you build a clay statue, whatever it is, it becomes yours because you applied labor to it. And society rewards that, right? Society rewards the person who hunts the fox and captures the fox. Society rewards the person who hunts the whale and captures the whale. Society rewards the person who builds the duck trap, the duck decoy. And society rewards the person who creates something using their knowledge and but keep in mind, nothing's new, right? Everything you create is based on something that already exists. It's already been grown somewhere else on it, right? It's in the earth. Maybe you go to the store and you buy a paintbrush and a piece of canvas. Maybe you buy a piece of paper and a typewriter. I don't know. You buy Photoshop, right? Whatever you're buying, right? You're making an NFT. My goodness, please. I hope I don't have to teach you this year, right? Everything comes from somewhere else. There's really nothing new under the sun, as the scripture goes. All right, so the first case, or actually our only case today, International News Service versus Associated Press, is designed to teach us about creation. Now, I apologize. The book, this case jumps around. This case used to be in the same chapter as the Fox case. They moved in the last edition. I don't like that change. So you have to jump around the page a little bit. I apologize. But they put in the chapter on IP. All right. So we have to. Did everyone? Nicholas, back down. Do you want to give me the facts, please, in INS versus AP?
AP is gathers news and goes around the world to collect it, and INS was bribing employees of newspapers. And AP is kind of worldwide. INS is stationed mainly in Jersey.
Jersey, yeah. So, I'm from Staten Island, so I can say that.
Employees and taking the news, and also taking early news from the bulletin board.
Okay, no, so just I'll get to that in a minute. So we have a news organization, right? The Associated Press. Big, worldwide. Okay. We have another news organization, International News Service, which is not so big, even despite their name, so sort of smaller. Will, how did AP gather their news? Let's just walk through, before you get to the competition stuff. How did the AP gather news?
They would, they got they're using their own resources and they have to go out and actually go and people and stuff like that.
Okay, so 1918, what's going on in the world at this time?
World War II. Or World
War I. And in the 1918 time period, how would one get a story from the front in Germany back to New York?
It would come across the roads, it would have like telegraph. Well, I guess it come across and then it would have like telegraph. And across it.
Okay, now what's a telegraph? Because people just
Telegraph is like basically like a rudimentary telephone, like tablet and stuff like that.
okay. If you ever watched Titanic, right? That Morse code, right? A telegraph was a precursor to the telephone. These wires we stretch across the Atlantic, right? The Atlantic Ocean. And you'd have an ocean, you have an office somewhere in London or somewhere that sends a message over the cable and it gets picked up in New York on the eastern seacoast, right? But Marissa, my question actually is more basic. That's how they transmit the news. How did they actually gather the news, Marissa?
From the reporters,
Okay, what do reporters do?
they go out and interview and kind of find out what's going on.
All right, so they've reported on the ground in Germany. They've reported on the ground in France. They report on the ground in England, right? Germany sees there's some battle. He interviews people, and then what does he do?
Takes the news back to.
How do you take news back? I know it sounds stupid. What do reporters actually do?
They send a message.
Before they send a message, what do they do? You're holding something in your hand right now.
Oh, it's my apple.
No, I know it is, but what? There were no. What?
They write it.
You write it down? Yeah, I'm trying to. Right, so there were no Apple stylists back there, but they had these things called pens, right? They actually had things. She has an actual pen, right?
It's funny.
I was trying to, yeah, I was trying to give you a hint, right? All right, so a reporter would write something down. All right, so Kinsey, the reason why I'm making a fuss about the pen, which you're holding a real pen in your hand, you put it down, okay. What is news? What is news?
I guess like.
So, for example, I was driving down the highway this morning. I saw an accident. It looked really gruesome.
I guess it's
Is
just
that news?
retelling what you saw happen.
Yeah. So I was driving the highway this morning. I saw an accident. Looked ugly. Is that news?
I guess if you tell everybody.
I just told everyone in this classroom.
Yeah.
I just gave you news. Can I prevent you from repeating that?
No,
Do I own that news?
no.
No. Pedro, let me ask you a follow-up. Now, let's say instead of I told it to you, I wrote it down on an actual piece of paper and I started passing it around. Could you steal my paper and just run away down the hall with my piece of paper with my news on it?
Yeah, I could steal your paper.
Yeah, what am I going to do to you? You can steal my stuff?
Well, you wrote it down, you gave it to me.
It was not a gift. I just gave it to you to look
Well, if
at.
I take it, then yeah. I stole
Okay,
it.
so I'll come and I'll arrest you. Okay, good. But let me ask you a different question. Let's say you have a pen and you say, "Oh, Black wrote this thing down. Let me a piece of paper. Let me copy it, word for word. You copy down my story. Can you do that?"
I don't think you can do that exactly,
Why
because
not?
that's your words
So,
and your story.
so what? And then you give it to Christina. Say, "Hey, Christina, I just got this great new story about this accident. I-10. Here, let me show you the story." Can I stop you from doing that?
Not necessarily. I guess what you're saying, like, so the news is like the
What is
events,
news? Yeah. I'll go back to the
right?
question, Pedro. What is news?
It's like the historical recording of events of that day,
Right.
that you know.
Can I?
tell others
Okay, so
about.
obviously I can't control the fact there was an accident. I can, right? That happened. But what can I control?
Who you tell it to
Not just who,
and where you write it,
how.
how you write it.
Right. So when you reduce a story, it's a big fuss about the pen. I'm sorry, Marissa. Right. But making such a big fuss about the pen is when you write something down. That's your creation. You took a piece of paper, you took some ink or your stylus, right, and you converted what you saw in the world to this paper. Right. Again, you can't own the news. The idea that I own the car wreck or I own the story about a battle is just nuts, right? You can't own the news. But you can reduce the news to a piece of paper, right? So when a reporter working for AP saw there was a battle or somewhere in Europe, and he wrote a newspaper story, and they transmit that story over the wire, right? That was a creation. He made this story up, right? And he said, here's what happened. So it's actually not the news that you have control over, but it's your reporting of the news that you have some creation over, right? We'll get to the legal issues here in a bit. Everyone get that gist, right? It's not that the news was owned. No one said that. It's your story about the news was owned. Now, Christina, at the time, could the Associated Press copyright their stories?
Not feasibly.
Okay, that's a very good answer. Why not feasibly?
They were reporting so many stories. As soon as
What's a copyright? Let's take a step back. What's a copyright? This comes later. We'll come back just
it's
briefly.
like a legal protection for work that's produced by someone.
In writing, yeah. So if you write a book, you write an article, you record a song, you paint a picture, you take a photograph, right? Whatever it is, it's going to be eligible for copyright protection, which means if you apply to the government, you submit paperwork, you say, this is my book, this is my article, right? It's original, it's mine. The government can give you basically a protection that page over there can't go and rip off your stuff, right? Sorry, you have to be the guy, right? Everyone here with me. But was it feasible, Christina, for the Associated Press to put a copyright on every story they publish every day? Why not? It's not a big deal. Too much time, right? It's expensive, it's time consuming, and then after a day, does anyone even care about the news? No. Right? One of the aspects of the news is it's really only useful for a very short period of time. After a day or two, no one cares anymore. It's old news. You have archives, right? And they charge a lot of money for archives. Go look at Lexus and Westwood. A lot of money in archives. But news of value is when it's hot, when it's fresh. All right. So AP was kind of operating in a legal gray area, right? Because they realized they weren't actually seeking copyright protection, but they were sort of hoping that no one would copy them. But that wasn't to be, Jen. What did or at least, by the way, the facts are completely false. None of this actually happened, right? There's a note of this after the case, but the facts in the case, Jen, what's alleged to have happened here?
It's alleged that the right to property was lost once they displayed that to the public, so they technically didn't have any rights over it.
No, walk me through the three approaches. Actually, I think Nick was trying to do that about 10 minutes ago. What are the three approaches that were done here? The three ways that there was sort of borrowing of the news, so to speak. What are the three things that were done here? How did AP INS rip off AP?
They tried to like bribe newspapers.
Okay, that's number one, right? If they tried to bribe employees, and look, when you get a story out from Europe, wink, wink, nod, nod, give us some information. Is bribery legal, Jen? No, right. You can't offer someone money to break the law, right? To basically steal company property. Okay. What was the second thing they tried to do there, Jen?
They tried to permit the defendant to obtain news before publication.
Yeah, they basically were asking for leaks. Short of bribery, but asking for leaks. Okay, that's also not kosher. You can't do that. Sophia, what's the third one that everyone sort of divided? The first two, whatever. Everyone agrees those you can't do. Probably never actually happened. Never happened. What's the third allegation?
That INS copied the news from bulletin boards, early editions of the newspapers, and then sold that information and rewrote it into the newspapers.
Excellent. So you always see the movie, extra, read all about it, right? You always see this in movies. So imagine, the early edition paper comes in, on the newsstands in New York at 5 a.m., right? They go to the newsstand, they pick up a bulletin, say, Normandy, Versailles, right? Whatever happened today. Then they go to the telegraph office, they go da 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 da, and they send the message out to their office in San Francisco, which is 3 hours behind. And because of the differential in times, they can then print the newspaper with that story. So in theory, at least, they're able to use the Earth's rotation to their advantage, right? They're able to send the early edition from New York out to the West Coast papers. Now, again, this never happened, right? It was much easier for the INS to just bribe people than to go these elaborate, methods, right? This never happened. But this is probably a test case, right? Brianna, what's a test case? We use this phrase a lot in law school, but I think this is one of these cases. What's a test case? Oh, that's such a good answer. Now I was looking at that. That's actually a really smart answer. Anyone else what a test case is? Yeah, you're next. Okay, good.
It would be like a litigation that is designed to see like as a benchmark where the courts might stand on an issue.
Good. Was the goal of this actually resolve a real dispute?
No.
What were they trying to set here?
They were trying to establish pretty much a legalized monopoly on their product.
They wanted a precedent, right? A test case is when parties are engaged in litigation that's sort of not really a conflict. They want to set a precedent. It's almost collusive, right? They were working together. And in fact, Ryder, what happened after this case was over? Did they keep fighting?
No, actually, they actually continue to operate as normal and help establish greater.
They worked out an agreement, right? That arrangement. So this case is all for show, right? Faux show, as they say, right? It was not a real dispute, right? This is all about setting a precedent. And I think Ryder made a fair point when he said that the Associated Press, which was this huge international conglomerate, wanted to set a monopoly. Because once the law was that they had control over their stories, then they had to reach agreements with all the other newspapers. They couldn't just copy their stuff. All right. So I'll come back to you, Brianna. That's actually a very creative answer. I appreciate creativity. It's actually something law students. Sometimes law students get jaded. That's actually a very good answer. I like that. So let's walk through the court's opinion, right? Oh, I'll come to you in a minute. Let's do a poll question. Question number 4. And I'll ask Brianna your answer in a minute. What is quasi-property? What is quasi-property? Okay. All right, I'll stop another 5 seconds. All right, Brianna, help us out here. How did you define quasi-property?
I thought of it as property that you create that's not belong to you.
All right, so let me ask you a harder question, Brianna. What does property mean? Forget quasi. What does property mean?
Yeah, that's the whole point of class.
Yes, it's part of the class. What's property? You're now in this class, what, class number 4? What's property? To know what quasi-property means, you have to know what property means, I think. Louder?
Something tangible.
Is an idea or news tangible?
Not until you sit down on something like paper.
All right. Laura, what's property?
Anything that can be owned, I guess.
But what can be owned? Isn't that the point? Isn't this case fighting about can the news be owned? So who gets to decide what property is? Which this is now this may be an unfair question, but which branch of the government usually gets to decide those sorts of things? And did the legislature create a method by which you could have ownership in books and ideas and newspapers and stuff?
Yeah, the copyrights and trademarks.
So why isn't that the end of the case? Why could the court just say, yeah, they could apply for copyright, they didn't, you lose?
Because it's not an efficient solution to the problem.
Yeah, so that courts can just make stuff up because it's inefficient?
No.
Ooh, Linda, let me ask you the same question, right? Does the court say that they actually have a copyright under the law here? Does the court say that AP has a property right under the law here? Is there a property right?
Not for news.
So if they don't have a property right, what do they actually have?
Like, they have the right not to have like unfair competition.
But is that a property right?
No.
What kind of right is it? What's the phrase we're trying to find here?
Like, quasi.
What does quasi mean? Forget property. What does quasi mean? Q-U-A-S-I.
Kind of like resembling something.
Ooh, good, resembling. Almost, kind of, constructive maybe, right? These are Shadi's word earlier. Do courts have the power to just create quasi property? Is that a thing? Abby, what's quasi property? Help us out here.
Well, the court doesn't really explain.
No, they don't. This is why you gave me right. You're all just like, give me these evil eyes. I can see it. I see if you're mad. You're scowling at me. What's quasi property, Abby? Help us out here.
They don't really explain what it is, but they say that they have a right to the property as opposed to their competitors.
You're about to take even more. Federal copyright law. And this is something separate, right? This is not a copyright law. If it's not statutory law, what kind of law is this? What do you call it? Common law. You're about to hate me so much. Courts create federal common law.
They're not supposed to.
Oh, Erie. I know you guys are going to hate me on this one. You thought it was fake. You know, never do Erie again. Could courts just create federal common law? Right? This was about 15 for Erie v. Tompkins. But the court here basically, right? And for my Dutch students who haven't taken civil procedure, federal courts aren't supposed to create federal common law, right? That's not supposed to happen. But the court here did this. It's a very famous case called Erie Railroad versus Tompkins. Before, it's earlier, so it's not prohibited, but it created federal common law. And the court said, well, there's law on this. They could have applied for a federal copyright. They didn't. But we're going to give them protection anyway because we'll make something up. We'll call it quasi-property. So this phrase quasi-property, which again is not defined, Abby, 100% correct case, is like this almost, it's like this property right that's almost property, right? It's like something the courts want to protect. Let me give you a bit of math background. Here. So what's quasi-property for your notes? It's something that a person can own that's not exactly consistent with the law, but it's close enough, right? It doesn't exactly fit into the federal copyright law, but it's close enough. And because there's this thing that resembles, Linda said resembles, something that resembles property, it's close enough. Huh. So, Marissa, okay. Marissa, why do you think the court created this quasi-property right? This weird thing they just sort of made up out of thin air?
Because it was issue that hadn't been brought up before, so to deal with how much issue they had.
They didn't have to make stuff. They could have just said, we don't know, you lose. Like, could they have just said, this is for Congress to fix, not for us, if you lose? Yeah, that's actually the dissent. The dissent's not in your book, it's by Justice Brandeis. Justice Brandeis said, if there's no federal law governing this, then let the legislative branch figure it out. But why for instance, the question is, why do you think they felt motivated to create this rationale? Yes, there was no law, agreed, but why do they feel motivated to make this rule up? Tatiana? What bothered the court about this case? Why were they bothered? They were pretty clear on their motivations. Good. I fall on this. This room is so poorly designed. My God, why the hell are there steps right here? It's a death trap. Torque professor, you could fix this, but no. Why are there levels in this classroom? It's just so poorly designed. Forget the ADA. It's disastrous for professors. Anyway, go back down. Why? You're right. Labor theory. Why do you think the court felt labor theory compelled this result? Good. Yeah. Yeah, excellent, very good. Labor, right? AP put all this hard work into gathering the news and transferring it across the ocean. They put their telegraph cables, a lot of work was involved. And they use this analogy of actually farming, right? I want to make sure I get this quote right. He says, INS was trying to reap what is not sown, right? It was trying to appropriate the harvest of AP. So they basically analogize it to crops. This is what judges do. They say, well, you can't just walk in someone, take someone to a farm and take their crops. You can't take their news stories. But is a news story the same thing as an ear of corn or a potato? Lillian? Why not? Why is an ear of corn or a potato that you rip from from Old McDonald's farm, right? Why is that different than copying a story of a bulletin board? Louder, I can hear. Why is stealing a potato from a farm different than copying a story of a bulletin board? No, food's very valuable. It's not just value. Why is it different? Taking a person's literal potato versus copying a story off the board. Why those different acts? How many potatoes are there? You take a potato, one potato, right? If you copy, this is my example of the picture before. If you copy someone's story, you're taking their story. Are you stealing their newspaper? No. So is the analogy work? No. How else would you think?
I think that it's kind of like the story is individualistic, like there might be other potatoes in the world, but just like version of the story is unique to the person who did it.
But you're copying the story verbatim, word for word. You're plagiarizing, copying word for word. Does that matter? So is that the same thing as stealing someone's potato for a farm? Yeah. Amar, what do you think?
I don't think so. Not all the potatoes are the same.
All the potatoes are the same. Are they all the same? Is every potato the same? Farmer shaking his head no. Oh, these potatoes, you need different size, different shapes, different spuds. I don't know. I don't know what spud is. I don't get it. I go razor pick with my kids. That's all I know. But Amar, back to the question, right? Is a potato the same thing as a story of news? Does that analogy hold?
I don't think so.
All right, we can go back and forth this all day. Let me just take a step back. The court, though, thinks this analogy works, right? The court says this is interference with business, right? Sean, what case have we studied so far that talks to interference with business or interference with the trade? Well, one, what else? I was thinking that's not wrong. But in which the court's rationale is based on interference of trade. Which case am I thinking of? No, don't whisper it. Keep your mouth closed, I can tell. All right. Okay. What case? Only done it 4 or 5 cases. Go through one at a time. What case was about interference with business? Go through one at a time. What case have we done this semester, Sean? Okay. Was that about interference with business? What else do we do? Was that about interference with business?
Oh, hop on from my app.
No, go back to the other one. What was Keeble about?
I decoy ponds and check all birds.
Was business interference an issue in that case? Why?
Because he shotguns to the pond to make his birds spawn up.
And what was the basis of the court's ruling?
Interference with capture.
Interference with not just capture. All right. Interfering with the trade. All right. And I don't mean to pick on Sean. You just have to be the next on the draw. I'm sure there were 20 other people who didn't know either. You need to know your cases, right? And you need to know back and forth throughout the semester. We only have like 4 or 5 cases so far. We'll have about 100 by the time we're done. You need to know them by name, know the name of the case, and what the facts were and what the holding was. This is what I'm telling you. Having an open book exam doesn't help you. See, he has all the notes in the world, didn't help him. Right? And I don't mean to pick on Sean, just he happened to be next. But the sorts of questions I ask, it doesn't matter what's in your notes. You got to have it up here. You'll be flipping through your notes, you run out of time. So Keeble was about interference with the trade. Remember the example that if you have 2 schools next to each other, they can compete, but if one guy starts shooting his gun off at the students, it scares them away. That's not fair competition. The INS VAP case is very much the same. The court says to promote a fair competition, we will eliminate this sort of unfair tactic. In the duck case, he was shooting his gun off to scare the ducks away. Here, they're actually stealing their ducks, so to speak. They're stealing their information. So in the end, the court said that INS was to be blocked from copying off the bulletin boards with their dispatches. All right, questions? Questions on INS for AP? Yeah, Shadi, go ahead.
Is it inaccurate to kind of call it a commercial interest they're protecting?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, it's a commercial interest. That's a good answer. Other questions on INS VP? All right. I have about 10 minutes left. I want to walk through the IP stuff. IP is short for intellectual property. We have classes here. We have an IP clinic. If you have a science background, hard science, chemistry, physics, things like that, you're special in that regard. There's something called the patent bar, which you can take if you have certain majors. If you have questions, you can ask me later. But it does give you certain leg ups in employment. Something to think about if you have a hard science background. Not required. That's actually why I went to law school. My background is computer science. And then I had an interest in patent law, but then I decided to find something else in my life. All right. So there are 3 major types of IP I want to talk about in my remaining minutes. Copyright, patent, and trademarks. All right. Copyright, patents, and trademarks. A copyright is an idea that's in some physical medium. A book, an article, music, a song, an artistic work, could be a painting, could be a photograph, could be a sculpture. It's some idea that you convert to some sort of tangible. Someone said tangible earlier, right? Something tangible you can hold in your hands, right? You can hold a statue, you can hold a sculpture, right? Copyright lasts very long. Depending on the specifics, it can last 7 years after a person's death. Not 7 years after the creation, 7 years after the death. So, you guys are all young, in your 20s. Let's say you create something now and you live to 100. That means that copyright will last for 170 years from today, which is insane, right? In fact, there's actually a huge dispute. Minnie Mouse, right? The character. Copyright should have expired already. They've actually extended it a few times. See, someone said Mickey Mouse? Right. I think the Winnie the Pooh copyright actually is expiring this year, if my memory serves. Not the Disney Winnie the Pooh, the actual original book Winnie the Pooh. It's based on a book. All right, so the 3 requirements for a copyright. I'm summarizing a lot here, so just bear with me. Original. Has to be original, right? It has to be independent creation of the author. You have to have some creativity, right? You made it up. You can't say, I invented, MacBook Pro, right? No, you didn't. That's not your copyright. Right? You didn't. Actually, that's a bad example. But like whatever book you're reading, Duke Media and Career. I made that book up. No, it's not yours. Second, it applies to many types of works: literary, musical, dramatic, graphic, sculptural, motion picture, sound recording. Lots of different contexts, but it doesn't apply to ideas, right? Like, I have an idea. That's not a copyright. You have to actually reduce it. The third factor, it's got to be fixated in some tangible medium, on paper, on a canvas, even on a hard drive, right? Some digital graphic, you can copyright that, an NFT, if you will. Okay. And again, copyrights last forever, 70 years plus life, 70 years after the life of the author. All right. The second type of IP I want to talk about is a patent. Right, a copyright is you're not protecting an idea. Both patents you are kind of, right. There has to be some kind of novel process, idea, plan of how to do something, right. A new way of developing a chemical, or you're developing a new way to make a pharmaceutical drug, right. Some sort of process, a new way to design a computer, right? You're drawing blueprints and schematics. So again, the copyright is for something tangible, physical. The patent describes how to make something new. It has to be creative. And the last one I want to mention is a trademark, right? A trademark. The trademark is a word or name or symbol that identifies some good, right? So Disney, right? Coca-Cola, Volkswagen, Nike, right? The swoosh, the little check mark, right? The Pepsi, right? M&M, melts in your mouth, not in your hands, right? These are words, names, symbols, devices that signify a product. And a trademark is designed to separate your work from other works in the marketplace, right? You ever look at any product, your little TM, right? That's a trademark. That's what I want to talk about. There's IP classes you can take at great length, but this is just a way just to give you some interest in it. All right, questions on the IP stuff? Yes, in the back, Julio. Well, generally, if it's an open source, it's not patented because it's not, you're not. People develop open source code are not putting it for patent; they want it to copy, so it's usually a little bit different. Right, you get a private licensing, like to share a different code, but it's not in the patent system. Yeah.
What's the importance of the Lanham Act and trademark?
Don't worry about it. Or at least from my perspective, don't worry about it. But we can talk later if you want. All right, don't pack up. I'm not done yet. I hate to have books packing before I say we're done. We're done when I say we're done. All right, so let me wrap up. I'll put the minute poll running as well, the exit poll. We've talked, I think, at length, ad nauseum about the rule of capture. We're based on the rule of capture. Keep in mind, the rule of capture often depends on what's actually being captured. Different rules for foxes, ducks, whales, oil, gas, baseball, right? We've seen the different variants of that rule. Then we talk about acquisition by creation. Acquisition by creation is very much a labor theory doctrine, taking what's in the commons, in nature, using your talents and skills to sort of convert it to a useful item. There are federal protections, copyrights, patents, trademarks, but also the court seems to create quasi-property, which is this weird thing which doesn't really pop up very often. In class on Thursday, we're doing property in yourself, your right to your organs. For the case you might be familiar with, Moore versus Regions of California. I think you've read that before. Read it again. Trust me, you'll want to know it fresh. Anything else? I will see you later. Have a wonderful day, and please put your exit poll before you leave the class. Thank you so much.